Okay, so let's have a quick summary, because we've galloped through a bit of philosophy here. I've suggested that we're rationally required to do what morality requires of us, so it's reasonable that tells us what we should and shouldn't do. If we don't do what rationally requires of us, this is because we are ignorant, or, if you don't agree with Aristotle or Socrates, we're possibly weak or corrupt. And we may be ignorant of what morality requires of us, because we are relying on others. So what's all this got to do with climate change?
And as far as getting acquired, I mean, we're trying to focus on the product. I think that if a lot of companies are built to be acquired, and I think what happens there is you leave yourself in a really vulnerable spot because you're growing and you say, hey, I won't hire that expensive VP of whatever because, hey, man, any day now we're going to get acquired. And then your product winds up suffering. So I think you need to really want to do the company because you don't know how long you're going to be at it. And luckily I've been searched a long time. I don't want to stay in search, so it's fine with me whatever happens with the company. But you have to focus on building the product to making the product better, and you have to focus on building a sustainable company.
It all started last spring when the Food and Drug Administration placed a black box warning on some popular anemia drugs. The labels warn against using the drugs in cancer patients with relatively mild anemia resulting from chemotherapy. The FDA says the drugs clearly shorten survival and speed the progression of cancer. In people with slightly worse anemia, the drugs might have the same effects. To Barry Straub, Medicare's chief medical officer, the message was clear.
I'm absolutely delighted first of all to have been appointed to this professorship. The role is going to be about public engagement in science. It is about making science accessible to as wide an audience as possible. It's about encouraging young people to think about science as a career. It's about making it easier for our academics here at the University of Birmingham to talk about their research to the general public, and it's not just about a one-way flow of information. It very much is about a dialogue.
Why do we need more entrepreneurs right now? The entrepreneurs who create and run our businesses, who play by the rules, are in fact critical to our success as a nation. We need them especially today. First, we need them to solve the current crisis. Business, not government, will end this recession. Government must help by creating fair rules, sound monetary policy, and by protecting our fellow citizens in periods where they are jobless. But the government has to stand to the side and let new entrepreneurial firms challenge companies that can no longer compete. We have to make way for the new entrepreneurial firms that will push us different tiers of innovation.
Now that story's been scotched as only part of contingency planning, but it was a symptom of the dramatic turn of events in South Australia, and it flushed out other remarks from water academics and people like Tim Flannery, indicating that things were really much worse than had been foreshadowed even earlier this year. So is Adelaide, let alone some whole regions of South Australia, in serious bother, considering that the vast amount of its drinking water comes from the beleaguered Murray, something many of us outside the state may not have quite realized. Is their predicament something we have to face up to as a nation? Those of you who've never heard the term Neo-Latin may be forgiven for thinking it's a new South American dance craze. If you're puzzled when I tell you it has something to do with the language of Romans, take heart. Over the years, many classes who have confessed they are not really sure what it is either. Some have assumed that they are so-called Late Latin, written at the end of the Roman Empire. Others have supposed it must have something to do with the Middle Ages. Or perhaps it's that pseudo-Latin which my 5- and 7-year-old boys seem to have gleaned from the Harry Potter books, useful for spells and curses that they zip one another with makeshift paper ash ones. No, in fact, Neo-Latin is more or less the same as the Latin that was written in the ancient world, Classical Latin. So, what's so new about it?
You've heard about SARS, AIDS and bird flu. Now researchers from Australia claim we're about to be hit by a new epidemic, motivational deficiency disorder. According to the British Medical Journal, 1 in 5 people are said to suffer from motivational deficiency disorder, or MODIT, and most don't even know they have it. Symptoms include being unable to get out of bed in the morning, being trapped on the couch, or wanting to spend the entire day at the beach.
I'm going to focus on the concept of judgment, that something is key to academic freedom. The university is in a position to sort of manufacture people's minds. It is clear that judgment is something that is naturally instilled in people in the normal course of events. And let me just start by pointing out something about how rare the concept of judgment is these days. thanks to blood's ability to clot even the surface of a nasty gas just able to heal up. But platelet cells aren't sticky all the time. And now researchers have identified the key protein that makes them come together. This video shows how normal cells spread out tiny arms to catch other cells and to grasp onto the surface of a wound. When the crucial protein is absent, the cells don't stick out their arms as much and can grip the surface of an injury as tightly.
For many years, the favorite horror story about abrupt climate change was that a shift in ocean currents could radically cool Europe's climate. These currents, called the overturning circulation, bring warm water and warm temperatures north from the equator to Europe. Susan Lucier, an oceanographer at Duke University, says scientists have long worried that this ocean circulation could be disrupted.
Well, of course, the fact that the hands look so similar was intentional. The scriptorium wanted a professional-looking work and they didn't want a lot of individuality in the script. So, the primary objective of the original's writing in this manuscript was to make it look identical. As a matter of fact, because scribes are different people and they have different hand-eye coordination and different habits, they ended up producing something that was slightly different, which is not easy to tell to someone who hasn't been staring at the manuscript for a while.
Rebuilding carbon-rich agricultural soils is the only real productive, permanent solution to taking excess carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. She is frustrated that scientists and politicians don't see the same opportunities she sees. This year Australia will emit just over 600 million tons of carbon. We can sequester 685 million tons of carbon by increasing soil carbon by 0.5% on only 2% of the farms. If we increased it on all of the farms, we could sequester the whole world's emissions of carbon.
The effect of the first difference is, on the one hand, to refine and enlarge the public views, by passing them through the medium of a chosen body of citizens, whose wisdom may best discern the true interest of their country, and whose patriotism and love of justice will be least likely to sacrifice it to temporary or partial considerations.
Okay, see, the thing is that I've had a look at the peer reviews about the funding application, which you suggested that I do. But what I found is that several reviewers are saying that there isn't actually sufficient focus on my topic. Right. I think that is actually the case, but I remember that the proposal is based around things that have already been done. And the fact that it's just one of a number of factors, and these affect health and safety. I think areas around of stress, they cover up much more ground. So I think if you're sort of upfront about it, and you say, look, I need a wider spectrum here, we could perhaps suggest something else to try and measure bullying in the workplace.
Help us understand what entrepreneurship means to you. Is it just about starting companies?
Not at all, Dina. I think, for me, entrepreneurship is about transforming things by taking new ideas, by seeing them from concept into practice, so that the impact of the idea is larger than it would be. Let's say, if you just wrote a publication about it. So, I think it's finding creative ways to solve problems, to do new things, and I think that's what it's about. So, I think entrepreneurship can happen inside universities. I think we try to think of ourselves as an entrepreneurial university. We take risks, we try new things, and I think that's an important asset for anyone who wants to lead an organization or lead change.
Now we come right out of the woods. Transpiration is the passive process by which water moves from the wetness of the soil up a plant and into the air via the leaves. We've known about it for years and you probably haven't thought about it since school. The assumption is that transpiration works by a wick effect, where the negative pressure of the water in the leaves draws up water from the roots, but until now it has been impossible to replicate this process in the lab. Abraham Strouk and Tobias Wheeler from Cornell University in New York have constructed a fake plastic tree which emulates the natural process. I spoke to Abraham Strouk and started by asking why synthetic transpiration has been such a tall order.
For many years, the favorite horror story about abrupt climate change was that a shift in ocean currents could radically cool Europe's climate. These currents, called the overturning circulation, bring warm water and warm temperatures north from the equator to Europe. Susan Lucia, an oceanographer at Duke University, says scientists have long worried that this ocean circulation could be disrupted.
A majority of U.S. high school students say they get bored in class every day, and more than 1 out of 5 has considered dropping out, according to a survey released Wednesday. The survey of 81,000 students in 26 states found 2/3 of high school students complain of boredom. Usually because the subject matter was irrelevant or their teachers didn't seem to care about them.